getting 3 people together that are doing like big things. I think what would be really impactful, rather than talking about what we do, more so talk about what we experience, what we go through as the leaders of movements and communities.
I think that's amazing.
And how we navigate our mental health. I think that would be felt a lot more than going,
this is what we're doing while we're doing it.
This is what we're doing while we're doing it, being like, this is what we're doing while we're doing it, but also like this is our shit too, like this is what we deal through on a daily basis, or this is what we deal through, or this is what we're navigating right now, I'm stepping into fatherhood. I've had fucking lots of shit pop up for me, and Jian, like you're going through stuff too. We're all going through shit.
I'm tired.
Hey, I need to go sleep.
Nah, I'm not
like you're on the grind, bro.
Yeah,
like,
I'm in the depth of it.
I talked to your crew, and they're like, you guys went through a real rough period. You had like one person show up, and they said it was tough.
Yeah,
and like the other days and other moments where you need the tools to work through that shit.
Yep.
To like keep the spirit high, and
it's kind of cool because we're also what we're trying to teach or showcase or get people to embody. We're also having to do it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because we're facing the challenge of doing it.
Absolutely.
Even navigating as a team. There's 5 of us, and when there was one person 3 days ago, we all were flat as, and it's like, how do we lift each other up and get us through this? And we all in our own ways have our methods, but I did breath work with Maddie and Jordy and Tiggs do their thing together, and it's as much a part of trying to inspire and create, I guess, positive change. We have to also focus on our mental health and make sure that it's possible to do that.
Can't pour from an empty cup. So they say. And it's so true. We can't be of service if we're not fit for service. I've learned that the hard way many times. I'm sure you have too. Getting to that point of burnout, and then having that inability to like articulate, and my brain just won't work, and I get foggy and I get stressed. I'm like, my brain's not working. I'm struggling to teach. I'm struggling to do whatever. Then I go, okay, I need rest. Let's pull back here.
Do you get like that, Coos?
Definitely. You kind of just get on autopilot sometimes. And I wonder if you guys experience this too. Because for the way that, obviously I do something that's a little bit different to you guys, like not community events, mine's more like speaking, but I deliver the exact same keynote over and over and over again. So it's like sometimes it gets a little repetitive, but that's where you kind of just have to remember that like quite often it's people seeing and hearing about something like this for the first time, even if though it's so basic for you. You got to remember that what's basic for you isn't for somebody else. So don't ever hide or think that your information that you're sharing with someone is too small or too irrelevant, because sometimes, or quite often, just because it's like something really simple for you, it's like something that's life-changing for somebody 100%. Else. Like the breath is a perfect example. I mean, I'd been an athlete for a long time, and I'd learnt from breath coaches, and I still only became aware of the mechanics and why we should be breathing through our nose like 2 or 3 years ago, like after my athletic career. So, and now I think it's like the simplest information, but I remember back to like, I didn't really understand the mechanics and the, the reasons and the physiology behind breathing through our nose. And now that I get to like teach that in like the most basic ways, and I know you guys both teach breath as well, far more in depth than me, but like I bring it back to the most basic ever, and I go, we take 25,000 breaths a day. Most of us are breathing suboptimally, like I was, and I still do. I need the reminder to catch myself. Am I breathing through my nose and my mouth? And actually like learning the science, but then trying to translate it to people in a way that's like makes sense. I feel like that's the art of, I feel like what we're all doing quite well in our own ways is like connecting the science and philosophy and physiology of complex things, but making it really digestible, fun and cool for people, cool to be conscious, cold nips. It's like trying to bring information that can be looked at as sciencey or woo-woo and make it like digestible.
Make it appealing.
It's hard.
It is, because, and on the topic of mental health, I don't know if you guys agree, but like it's not seen as cool, or it's taboo. It's like, let's push it aside. We still have that culture. So like a big part of, it's within the Call to Be Conscious name, and within Cold Nips, it's like, let's make this fun and appeal to as many people as possible, so that there's a little doorway that you can walk through and like be open to experience the modalities, or like breath work. It's sick. It's grown so much, and it's utilized so much, but still it's probably by the majority not. There's the opportunity for that to keep
100%.
going.
Yeah, I just feel like that it lies in the mental health movement is so amazing, and there's so much awareness everywhere. But to see change, we need to do something. Like, we need action for something to happen. And so many people like raise awareness, which is so amazing. But I love that like all of our movements is about inspiring people to come and do something, like do the breath, do the stillness, jump in the water. Like, it's in action. You can.
We're on the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing the stuff. People are getting the change.
Yeah.
Like in real time. Are we recording?
Yeah. Well, we're just on. I kind of realised we're not gonna just. Yeah, we'll just pick it up from somewhere that sounded good at the start. Yeah, just have like a riffy conversation.
Oh, I love it.
But I guess the intro for everyone who is listening and has been listening for a while, this is probably on my podcast and Ryan's, but I'm Cooper, Ryan Hubbard's here from Cool to Be Conscious. What's your last name, John?
Wong Yen.
Wong Yen.
It's such a mouthful. Jian Wong Yen.
Jian Wong Yen from Cold Nips. I guess for everyone, maybe do you want to explain a little bit about yourself, Jian, for my audience, because I've had Ryan on the podcast before. Go back and check that one out. Cool to Be Conscious founder, great friend of mine, incredible human with a beautiful story. But Jian, I haven't got to know you too much. It would be nice to learn a little about what you do, and then it'd be cool for us just to riff as owners or founders of movements that are helping people, like you said earlier in the convo, Ryan. Yeah, the challenges that we face and the struggles, because it's very nice from the outside looking in, people going like, look at these things you've created, you must like have the best life. But I know I've spoken to you about it, Ryan, like we're dealing with a lot. And I know for me and you, like we're running our things pretty much alone. Obviously we have help and there's people around us that are helping. But for one, it's lonely. And for two, it's like, yeah, how do you manage taking care of your own well-being while being the person that helps everyone else? So it's like quite a nuanced balance that you have to find. So yeah, I'll start to you, John. Tell us a bit more about Cold Nips and where you're from, what you do.
Definitely. So I'm living over in Perth, Western Australia. But co-founded a movement called Cold Nips, which is essentially, we say it's a community movement. It's getting people together and exposing to them 5 values that we've found. So I started with Ryan back in 2019. And like a little bit of the backstory. Yeah, different Ryan. Another Ryan. But a little bit of a backstory on it. I kind of came through a bit of a struggle period in my life where these things came up, and it forced me into a place where I had to try and make some changes and I guess find myself. I lost myself. And Ryan, the other co-founder of Cold Nips, he was living over in WA, and he said, why don't you come over here, man? It's beautiful. And I you hear things about WA. It's a beautiful place. So I packed up my van, drove across the country, and he had listened to a podcast, and a guy had, I can't remember who the podcast was, but it had inspired him to do morning dips and to set a challenge to do 2 weeks. So I joined him when I got there, and we just felt incredible ourselves. Just like no knowledge or understanding as to why or what it is. Just we feel good.
Your very own Wim Hof story.
Literally, yeah. and then so we were like, well, let's try and share this feeling with other people. Again, like there was no knowledge back then, and made an Instagram, and things went crazy. And within 5 weeks, there was 250 people.
Wow. And
that's when we started to think like, there's more to this than just the feeling. There's like a lack or a missing. There's a void that people are hungry for and craving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we delved into it and been running community events for the last 5 years.
That's from 2019.
Yeah.
When did you guys start? Right, 2020.
2021 was officially when Cool to Be Conscious was born.
Yeah.
But I started sharing breath into 2019. 2020 over in New Zealand.
So you copied them. I actually wanted to bring this up because this is quite interesting. Just the fact that like we're all pulling from the same different things but bringing connection, because I was thinking, this is super random, but I was just thinking that I share a lot of quotes in like my work, and they're usually like adaptions of quotes put together, and I always get scared, like, am I going to get in trouble for stealing someone's quote? But then I'm like, we're all pulling from the same knowledge pool and the same like information, and that's like, you found the ocean and the cold dips before probably knowing the science or like, you know, anything. So it's like we're all under this ether of like pulling bits of info from the universe that come to us because we're drawn to it.
Yep.
And then later you like meet people, and it's so funny when people are doing it, I find, for the wrong reasons. That's when you start getting people who have like competition and think that they got to like, someone's taking away from them. Whereas it's so beautiful being with you guys. Like the last 3 days, Cold Nips are doing a national tour. We went down to Coolangatta. You partnered with the Good Human Factor. I did some gratitude today down at Burleigh at the beach with Ryan's Cool to Be Conscious crew. You guys partnered up, which I feel guilty that I didn't go to this morning. I went to the last two and I've been a bit tired. But it's so cool that like we're in this collaborative space rather than competition, and that's what sometimes, even in the mental health space, and especially once people become charities, you wouldn't believe it, and this is probably like a bit of inside scoop that people listening right now wouldn't expect, but once you become a charity, you're all fighting for the same funding, the same people to sponsor and give you funding, so it becomes a bit more competitive. But when you're your own movement, it becomes far more collaborative because you're like not trying to beat anyone.
You'd hope so. And there's definitely those who don't. But like, Ryan and I made a real point at the beginning. It's like we're in this to create positive impact and to hopefully change people's lives for the better, however minor or major that could look. And if we're competing to do that, it just destroys the beauty of what's unfolding.
Yeah.
And then, like with Cool to Be Conscious, I've been heavily inspired by you guys as the journey's unfolded. We just started off just dipping, and we just like dissected all those values ourselves, and then breath came up, and then I came down and experienced, I'd heard of you guys, experienced that, and it's like this full circle where we can support each other. And I don't know, I've got like Dream Together tattooed on me because I believe you can have far more of an impact and make things happen when it's collaborative.
Sure.
Over competing. Yeah,
I agree. 1 + 1 is 3 when you're working on stuff with people. What's let's go into like the challenges that we face with building our movements, because I think I get people all the time, like I've messaged on my Instagram this morning, people going like, oh, I love the work that you do and I really want to get into like speaking. I want to get into this stuff. Like, do you get the same thing sometimes? People going like, I love the movement you've created. Like, I want to kind of do something myself. Like, what advice do you have? So maybe we'll start with you, Ryan. What's been one of the challenges, that advice you could give someone so that you wouldn't have to go through again yourself, you know?
Man, big question. There's been lots of lessons and learnings, and like, looking back in hindsight and upon reflection, I'd like, man, I'd do this differently, but I didn't do it that way. I did it the way that I did, and it had to be that way for me to learn the lessons that I have. But one piece of advice that I'd always give anyone that's looking to start up something like this is to not rush the process and to just slow it down. At the beginning of Cool to Be Conscious, there was lots of noise, lots of energy. There wasn't really anything else in the same format doing the same thing as us in Australia. Cold Nips was probably the only other community really in the same format that were bringing groups of people together in the same kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Container of people.
Yeah, the container and the same amounts of impact and engagement, and there was lots of noise, and it was exciting, and so many people wanted to experience it and wanted to come down, and the numbers were just growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we wanted to expand with the speed of the energy that was coming in, and we opened up all of these communities across Australia. We took people through our training. We taught them how to told them how to facilitate breathwork meditation and cold exposure, and we got these people on the ground ready to go, and we really rushed that process and didn't nurture them in a way that was supportive for them, and I would say gave them the depth of understanding of how to facilitate and conduct and to hold and support a community in the way that it needs to be done. So now, in hindsight, I wouldn't rush to open up all of these communities across Australia and New Zealand. I'd focus on the one, do it really well, and then wait until those people pop up that have the depth of knowledge, have wisdom, have charisma, have personality, have general awareness to be able to navigate and support a community and the different facets that it brings. Because with breathwork and meditation, we're bringing people into these really beautiful, open, vulnerable states of being, and there's a lot going on. So practitioners and facilitators need to know how to support that. And at the beginning, we really rushed it off the ground, and what happened was it lost its quality. In essence, the sessions that were being ran and held and support and ran, like bless the practitioners that were doing it. It was under my and Rue's invitation to go and run these things, and we didn't recognize what it really takes to create a community really solid, and to make sure that it feels supported and everything's maintained, essentially maintained from an emotional standpoint, maintained from an equipment standpoint. And facilitated to the standard that we would like it to be facilitated in. And I'm sure those that are listening can know, and those that have been to different community events, et cetera, know the difference with going to an event and leaving going, whoa, that felt incredible, and then leaving the event going, yeah, it's great that I got to experience that, but I'm not really going to go back. It felt a bit funky. There's something out. And there's like a lack of alignment or depth of knowledge and how to really create a feeling for people to make sure they all feel heard, supported, and a part of it. And if there's not someone running it that has that knowledge and ability through experience, then it can be a little bit uncomfortable for people. They have pure intention, yet it can still leave them with a sour taste in their mouth. And that's what happened when we tried to rush into it and set up 13 communities across Australia and New Zealand.
It was crazy. I remember you guys popped up everywhere.
Everywhere. We're in Perth. We had 3-4 locations in New Zealand. We had 11 here in Australia, all the way up to Cairns. And I reflect back and I'm like, yeah, that was just a part of me that was wanting to rush the process. And it's because like patience is a real practice, you know, and if I could look back and go, that's one thing that I would do differently, it would be to just slow it down, you know, and focus on quality over quantity.
I think that's such great advice, because it's so interesting once you get into this entrepreneur space, even though I don't know if you'd call yourself entrepreneurs, but this idea of creating something, quite often the motto goes like move fast and break shit. Whereas when you're creating a movement where you have a duty of care, like what we're doing, it's so important to, you know, cross your T's and dot your I's and make sure that what you're putting out is of high quality, because, you know, you're taking people on a journey, on an experience that can be big for a lot of people. And that's why, I mean, I don't work in those sort of spaces on purpose, because I find it quite difficult, but I am going to do your practitioner training and I'll find it really easy. I'll go slow and take my time. How about you, Jian? What's been some of the challenges and things that you found with cold nips?
If not so much personally for me, but it's been a big workload. It's just the consistency of committing to what you're doing.
Is Cold Nips like a business, or are you guys set up as
We're
just
set up as a non-for-profit?
Non-for-profit, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as opposed to that in itself was actually a huge challenge of what path
whether it be a
to go
social
down.
enterprise, charity, not-for-profit.
And why, and it does with like full lack of knowledge when it was happening. It's like, yeah, making that decision and it feeling quite like permanent, even though it's not. That was a challenge. And then also, it's like the biggest blessing of doing it with somebody else, doing it with my best mate, Ryan. That's been a huge challenge. And I know that he would speak the same way. It's just like two people, two different lives, two different, like, although we are so similar and our beliefs are the same, it's just navigating like this intense, consistent journey, and also that it serves both of our lives so that it can be sustainable for us to ongoing. That's probably been actually the biggest challenge. But then also at the same time, it's been one of the most beautiful things is sharing it with your best mate in the journey. Because you said before, like, it is lonely. And I think I've kind of avoided that by knuckling down and doing it with someone. Yeah. But you still have to make a lot of the decisions yourself. And yeah, that's been a challenge for sure.
Yeah, because it's an interesting one, the idea of having a partner, because obviously you started Cool to Be Conscious with Rue, and that's not there anymore. So, like, there's such a dynamic between partnership that's going well, partnership that didn't really work out, and no partnership. So, like, this idea that we've all done it differently, I think it shows that,
Ryan and I spoke yesterday, like, ours is good, but it definitely hasn't been like smooth sailing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's much
it's
Ryan
challenging having partners that are your friends, like friends in business is like.
Try living on each other's lap for 4 months. We lived in the van for 4 months together.
Oof.
In the
whilst
same
we
van?
started. Same van.
Yeah, wow.
Together. So we had to get to know each other real quick. Not that we didn't know each other, but it was like
you learn
all of the little
more
things.
about someone when you're living next to them.
Everything, you know. And for me, the biggest thing with Cool to Be Conscious is maintaining integrity, being true to the values and morals that we started from, you know. And unfortunately, Rue's behaviours weren't aligned with those values anymore, and I had to make that decision, and that was really hard. You know, I had to think about the consequences of calling it forward, taking action, and asking him to step away, and then or continuing, allowing him to continue to stay in it, address the situation, figure it out, damage control scenario, or do what I felt was right, which was to ask him to step away, you know. And that's the depth of the stuff. That's the purity of what we're looking to achieve here, which is to support people on their journeys, to assist them with their emotional understanding, connection, avoid the violence, and to assist people to become better people, essentially, to create a better place and a better environment for all of us to be a part of. And it starts with self. It starts with the actions that we are partaking in. So if I'm teaching people how to be more safe, to be more compassionate, to be more understanding, and I'm not doing that myself, like, who am I to teach that? That's the lack of embodiment and the lack of alignment that Rue was partaking in. So just put yourself in the shoes of me for a moment. It was hard. It was probably the biggest challenge that I've been through, you know, to ask who was my best friend, like my best friend and my brother. We lived together, we did everything together, we studied together, everything.
Yep.
Like when that came through and I found out that what was going on, it broke me. Like it broke me from a brother standpoint, man to man, you know, business to business, it sucked. Yep. But brother to brother was much harder. That process was much harder. Not only because, you know, he was my best mate and I had that support and we had each other to bounce off, but a big wound for me in my life has been the masculine, and to have another masculine energy just let me down like that was a lot, you know. It was a lot. My mum and my dad split when I was 3.5 years old, so there's always been a lack of safety and trust in the masculine since then, you know. And then to have that play out was like, it just hit me really deep, you know. Not just this sucks, it was like, why has this had to happen to my best mate, to my business partner, when we're doing such beautiful, important, impactful things on the planet? And to hear that was like just a real dagger to the heart, you know. But for me to stay in integrity with what I do, I had to ask him to step away. And if he didn't step away, then I would have had to step away. I would have been out of integrity to do what I do and lead a community in the way that I do if he was a part of it.
Yeah, pretty powerful for you to acknowledge and to process that and to take action on that.
Well, a lot of us in these spaces, unfortunately, are out of integrity. We're talking about this yesterday in the space of facilitating, being of service, supporting. There's this leaky sexual energy from men in particular towards the women that are here showing up to evolve, to connect with themselves. And there's this manipulative behaviour that's happening. You know, I'm sure some of you that are listening are like, oh man, you know, I feel a little bit approached, or I feel there's been some inappropriate behaviours during these events, etc., etc. It's all inappropriate.
Yeah, it's like nowadays with like the run clubs and the new dating. It's like, no, people just want to go for a run. Like not everything has to be about dating. And sexualized.
Or sexualized, yeah. I hate that. And that's coming out because that's not what it's about.
And that's not what it's about. You're missing the point, you know. And like when we had a lot of people that were coming down to our stillness events, and I could see this trend of like Cool to Be Conscious, and I was seeing the trend of like, oh, this is the place to go and find people that were conscious and pick them up and date and start dating, etc., etc. And yes, it's still happening, but it's not happening in the way that it was. But what was happening, and I could see this in real time, is people coming down, dressing themselves up, making them look really approachable and attractive because they were wanting to date and meet somebody, but then they were going into the breath, into the energy of the community, feeling really what it was about and going, holy, and just seeing the dismantling and unarmoring of them, and then seeing the transition of intention towards self more than going to get something or having an agenda to meet somebody. It was like, no, I'm actually going down for myself. And you could just see these layers just start to pull away. Every breath, every meditation, the softening and the returning back to their own heart. Yeah, you know, and not trying to fill the void or trying to distract. And that's in an honest phrase, that's what majority of the population are doing when they're going to the run clubs. Distracting, looking to have another one night stand, looking to fill a void, running away from myself. Distract, rather than sitting with, cultivating a really strong relationship with you first, and then going to the run clubs.
That's where I feel like a lot of the work that I do on my journey has come from this idea of like basing your self-worth and identity on external validation, on what others think of you, fear of failure, fear of rejection. But then once you can kind of really shift that perspective, almost 180, and start looking behind you and go like, actually, who am I? Like, what are my values? Like, am I showing up to this thing because I'm going to get something out of it, or because I can put an Instagram up and someone sees me at it? And once you can do that, it's so much like less weight on your shoulder, because you don't care what other people think. You don't care if you get the likes on the Instagram that you went to Cool to Be Conscious. You went because it felt great. I felt connected. I felt still. I wasn't trying to get a girl. I was like, oh, this lowered my, heart rate. It lowered my anxiety a little bit. And I think so many of us get trapped in that sort of, mindset of like, oh, who's looking at me? What's around me?
I was in it for majority of my life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like hard to let go. And we flow in and out of it. But I think it's movements like both of yours, and hopefully like the workshops that I run and the podcasts that we host with different people can start to expose people to this idea of like, let go of like caring what other people think of you. What you think of yourself is what matters. And that's like the thing that most people struggle with is view of self. And to avoid having to look in that mirror, we don't sit still. We distract ourselves. We go, you were talking about it maybe at the start of the chat, or it might have been off air, this idea that like people go for a run, but it's not to do exercise and be present. It's to like escape not being present.
To run away from
to escape literally being present, sorry.
Yeah, running away from what may be coming up for you.
Mm-hmm. It's like an extension of constant distraction that we're all in. We're all just, it's so easy today, especially with phones and technology, just to be busy in the mind, as opposed to if you come back to breath or community, or you just have a simple, meaningful conversation, like a part of a community, it can take you away from that or bring you back to your heart.
For sure. I'd love to, while we're here, it's obviously we just did the first couple stops of Cold Nips. You guys are doing it in Australia too. It'd be nice to give a few minutes to let you share what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then if anyone's listening, how they can get involved on the rest of the tour, because it's very ambitious what you guys are chasing after right now. You're raising money for Happiness Co. Good friend of mine, Braden Ainsworth, works with them, and they're doing some amazing stuff over in WA. So I'd love to give you a bit of a platform to share a bit about how this tour came about, and like why you're doing it and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, we're hosting the sunrise dips that we've been doing for the last 5 years, but we're going to 100 different locations all over Australia every day consecutively. So 100 events in 100 days. And the goal is to get 100,000 people to participate. And that's the main goal. And it's just so people can come down and feel what it feels like. Because for most, what we've experienced, still to get up at sunrise and get yourself outside and into nature, and to surround yourself with other people, especially strangers, and then going for a dip is super foreign, and it's it's uncomfortable. It's something that they maybe wouldn't even consider. So 100,000 people, and then our I want to say boy maths, but our maths is if you get 100,000 people and they were to donate $10 each, then we could raise $1 million, and that's going towards Happiness Co Foundation, which is an awesome charity that's based in Perth, and they do a lot of work in the preventative health space. So they run mental health first aid trainings. They do a lot of school programs, particularly in remote areas. And they're really, the founder, Julian, he's a friend of mine, but I've seen firsthand the integral person that he is, and the love and passion that he has, and how he actually deeply wants to make a difference. I've seen that. And they're not a huge charity. I could name a few massive national ones. I know that money will make a huge impact in the work that they do. It'll change everything for them. So that's the charity and what we're doing. But yeah, at a core, the why behind it, and for me personally, is over the years I've seen the simple impact that what I said, getting up early and going for a sunrise dip, surrounding yourself with people and chasing discomfort. I've experienced, I've heard testimonials, people have told me, they're just witnessing like the abundance of joy that someone can have from having a meaningful conversation with a stranger. I know that is a gateway and a way of changing people's lives for the better. And yeah, we're on this movement, this progression, I think, towards a more conscious race, humanity, a future. And the more people that can do, whether it's like experience breath or just do something that they haven't done before that's uncomfortable, get out in nature, be present, that's a stepping stone towards that brighter future.
For sure.
And we're trying to, spread around Australia this concept and idea, and also connect and collaborate with people, like epic people like you guys both, that we've had come down and be a part of them and facilitate. We want to connect with you guys and showcase you guys and just bring noise, I guess, positive noise to the nation. I believe community can shape our culture into a better place. And that's ultimately, what it's all about, what we're trying to do.
I love it. I'll leave in the show notes a link to the social media and the website that you guys have. So if you're listening and you're like, you know what, I want to get involved in one of these. I mean, also Ryan's Cool to Be Conscious movement. There's you still around Australia as well. Yeah,
we're just about to relaunch in Melbourne and Sydney. Had a bit of a break through the winter periods. Yeah. But yeah, we're popping up again.
Be back after baby daddy.
Yeah.
But make sure you go check out both of the boys' pages and go get involved. I think it's so cool. Obviously, I've been to a few of both of your sessions, and it's just so nice, like getting outside, being in community. And I think it's a friend of mine who I do some work with has this really cool like matrix of like the 3 C's. Like we have to start with communication, which then builds connection, which then builds community. And it's so nice watching both of your movements that it isn't just breath and cold ice, like a cold ice bath. It isn't just dipping in the water. What you both do so nicely, and something that I love doing in my workshops too. Like when I do my keynotes, I do a gratitude exercise where people write down what they're grateful for and then share it with someone. Like we need to learn how to communicate better before we can actually connect. And it's so interesting, like obviously with our negative bias in our brain, like most of our conversations end up negative. 75% of our thoughts are negative. So if we can strategically shift conversations to the positive and communicate more positive, it's going to release more of the happiness chemical neurotransmitters in our brain. We're going to feel better. So prompting communication between people, which I'd love to go into the sort of communication exercise you both do and why, then builds a connection, which then in a community, you build a community, and that's where we're going to see like, systemic change in what we're, creating in what is obviously a declining mental health culture globally. Like how do we do something about that? And I think it starts learning how to communicate, which then builds better connections. But you can't go to community if you can't, it has to go in that matrix. It can't go the other way. You can't just rock up to a community but not be willing to communicate, or you won't connect. What's your guys' take on that? I'm going to start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of the most integral parts of our experiences, because what the connection and communicating aspect and component does is it enables people to lower the armor, and we all have it. We all have it unknowingly. Some is a lot stronger than others. When we meet somebody new, when we meet a stranger, there's these defense systems that are at play. Yes, it's a survival mechanism for our body to make sure that we're not in danger from this new or perceived threat that we're seeing in front of us. And what happens after we share a few words is it starts to soften, and you can feel this disarmoring or dismantling of this armor, and you can feel it and see it in real time. And it's important to do this before we go into breathwork, because if we're going into a breathwork experience with all this armor still up, when we're breathing, nothing's going to really happen. We're still in this defensive mode or state. So using these connection questions to really diffuse our system, and also to connect with someone that's there with you, creates the rapport and safety within the container, within the group of people. So when it comes to the breath work, they feel open and ready and able to trust in their body, to trust in the sensations with a lot more ease. And I see other practitioners or other people in this work of breath that completely miss that component, and the experiences and the results are completely different. So it's really necessary and important. And where the connection exercise come from for us, and why we started it, was from the conversation that I had with my psychologist right at the beginning of my journey. And I, prior to that conversation with my psychologist, never felt heard by my mum, by my friends. Like whenever I was going through something with my mates, or if I was going through anything with my mates, I was always like told to fucking pull it together, harden up, mate, get over it, mate, fucking crack a beer, mate. And that was like the banter. I think it's a Kiwi thing, but it's also an Aussie thing as well. I think it's a general population thing. We don't want our friends to show emotion because we actually don't know how to hold and facilitate that. So we'd rather shut that down straight away.
You'll be right.
You'll be right, mate. You'll be right. Pat on the back, slap on the back, and it takes us out of the process of sharing and expressing emotion or sharing from our heart. And it's actually like a selfish act that we are doing to close that down because we don't know how to facilitate it. So and the reason why we brought this in was because that conversation that I had with my psychologist back in 2019, for the first time ever, I felt as though that I was being listened to be understood, rather than for someone just to respond at me.
Waiting to talk.
And like, it impacted me more than I can probably imagine. And this lady, she was a holistic psychologist, and she just prompted questions to me that were just so simple. Hey, tell me about your life. How do you feel? How do you feel was the first time I'd heard how do you feel in a really long time. Like, how do you feel? How do you actually feel? I got to open up and share with this woman like what was really going on, and told her about my whole journey of life and what I'd been through. She said to me that nothing that you can say to me is going to offend me, nor probably surprise me. She said she's heard a lot of things. And I was like, great. So I just offloaded like my whole life story. And at the end of that conversation, I felt 10 kilos lighter. And I was like, what just happened? And I'd never been presented or given the opportunity to do that before. So I wanted to create that or recreate that in the form of a community exercise, because what I can recognize now, and I've seen this over the years of sharing the space with people, I'm sure Jian's seen it as well, is that we're all each other's psychologists and we're all our own psychologists. We just need to give ourselves permission to open up and to share and to express ourselves.
To listen
and
properly.
To listen to other people. We don't need to answer questions for them. All people want is to be heard and listened to and understood in a way. We don't need to give them the answers and get out the encyclopedia and say, this is the step-by-step process. People just want your presence. They want your eye contact. They want to feel as though that they're connected to you, and they want to feel as though they've been heard. That's it. And I realized that we could do that in these community events that we were doing. And when we started to incorporate this, it was just an absolute game changer. And I was like, this is what we're lacking, is like this connection, this like sense of, I see you, you see me, here we are going through similar stuff. I don't feel alone now. And that's all I needed. That's all I needed. I just needed to feel and be reminded that I'm not alone and you're going through something similar and we can connect on this level. And that was it.
And people like feel so much love from that. And I've just read Gary Chapman's 5 Love Languages book. And just hearing that connection exercise makes me realize how important quality time is to people, because there's a lot of people who would be in a relationship and a partnership and they live together and they spend so much time together, but how long do you actually sit down, no TV on while you're talking, no distractions at all and sit there and look in someone's eyes and talk to them, but actually listen to hear what they're going through and sit there with like an empathetic and open mind and like try and sit and feel what that person's going through, not just listen, like not waiting for your chance to talk, like not like be interested, not interesting, like actually be interested in what someone's going through, and you start to just connect so much more. Absolutely. And it's like an exercise, and you know my partner really well and our partners are great friends. Like I feel like there should be more people, which I'm hoping we're like leading the way with this, just encouraging people to like connect on a deeper level. And I feel like so many of us struggle with that because we have, you know, we've been grown up around this culture of, you know, get over it. Oh, you want to have a chat? Yeah, we'll go to the pub and have a beer. It's like building the spaces for it to be okay is so important, and that's exactly what you guys are doing.
Especially as men.
Yeah, have you found that too, John?
As men, we really lack deep connections, or going even slightly below the surface. So when Ryan and I co-facilitate any of our sessions, us being best friends, there's an introduction where we say like, even we consider ourselves, well, we're leading this space or this community, but even as best friends, we don't ask each other, like after a long period of time, actually how we are and get deep in that. But yeah, very similar to you, Ryan. I don't remember the point. In my memory, we've always just had a prompted question at the beginning, and that, I can't remember the point in which that actually emerged and developed. It's kind of just always, but we always saw that was the most potent, powerful, impactful part to the whole experience. And getting people to reflect when they come down, and then after that they've connected with another person, how do they feel? And usually like the energy level and just their openness is like great, so different.
And you both prompt a big hug as well at the start, eh?
Yeah.
You as well do that? Give them a hug?
Yeah, we do the hug after the connection. Yeah. And a big part of that is there's actually a lot going on, and I go into depth around this during practitioner training, around what's happening in terms of the chemistry, in terms of the body, the soma, the nervous system. But after an interaction like that, and there's trust there being built, there's rapport being built there with somebody, you have this opportunity to actually embrace with the physical bodies and to hold each other and to have a hug if you feel called to do that. And there's a lot going on. And like if we can hold another person close to our body and we feel safe to do that, the body starts to release oxytocin, which is the antidote to cortisol. So it's reducing the stress, reducing the heart rate, reducing the blood pressure in that moment. It starts to take place around 10 to 15 seconds of holding each other. But there needs to be trust and safety rapport built. If there's none and you're just hugging strangers, you're actually doing the opposite. You know, like you see people holding like the free hug symbol, the free hug, free hug, free hug. It's actually doing the opposite. That person that's giving out the hugs may be really grounded and centered and like solid in themselves. They've got this ability to remain trust and open to the world. But if the people coming in have this closure or defense systems up, but they're just like, I'll do a hug, they're going in, the body's actually signaling, I'm not actually okay here. And cortisol and adrenaline's being released. So they're going to this hug with the pure intent and then coming away from the hug feeling really rattled and like triggered and like jittery. So those that are listening and they're like, oh man, I hugged that guy because he said, do you want a hug? And I felt really uncomfortable. This is why. So make sure when you interact, when you're in that intimate setting and when you're close to another human, there needs to be trust and safety built. So if you're being asked to hug somebody straight off the bat, please feel free to refuse the hug, you know? And I always do that as well. Like, hey, if you feel called to hug, please have a hug after the connection exercise, but feel free to have a high five as well. Something that I now prompt as well. So
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I reckon you'll probably learn something from that.
Yeah, kind of absorbed a bit, and even just like thinking personal experience, like you can kind of register or read a scenario and know when it's appropriate, but it's not always easy.
It's not always easy.
Yeah.
Genuinely, when you had a conversation with somebody and you can feel this like diffusing or the volume of the energy that you're experiencing just be turned down throughout an interaction, and you can feel it. Like we all are landing into a deeper energy here now. At the beginning of the conversation, it was a bit tighter. It's because we're all still figuring each other out. We're listening, we're hearing, we're communicating, and now it's lower. The volume's lower. So like this is happening on a small micro level at these events, and like I think I'd really love to transition and segue into what Jian just mentioned then about men in the space and how there is so little and lacking, how much we're lacking the men in the space, but yet the statistics and the evidence shows so much that men are struggling and men are in a lot of pain, and the pain from men is being inflicted and put and pushed on their significant others in the space of the closer household. You beautifully said before, Coops, that we need to learn how to facilitate these conversations with our partners, with our family, with our friends. And it's a practice. It's a skill set that we must learn how to develop. I think there needs to be more courses on how to do that, how to learn to deepen a conversation, how to open a conversation up with a little bit more heart and emotion. Questions like, rather than responding and making their story about yours, and like talking about how you can relate to that, instead asking questions like, oh man, can you tell me more about that? Or how did that make you feel in that moment? Or, what was going on in that exact moment of time? Or keep enabling that conversation to flow more. And that's when the opening and the release and the emotion will start to bubble up. That's when the healing takes place. But it's not as easy as it sounds. But when it comes to our intimate, significant other, and more so, I want to really dive into the men here. It's hard, bro. And like, it's so hard to create an attractive, approachable segue and stepping stone journey for the average man. I look back on when I was exposed to this kind of stuff back in New Zealand when I was a lot younger. I saw a group of people doing yoga and I was just judging and criticizing and saying every word under the sun towards these people. And it was from my own insecurities and my own deep craving to feel that connected to my body, yet I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't know how to not judge myself to do that thing.
How'd you get there?
I didn't. I broke. I got to the point where my body was breaking. Sickness, illness, suicidal thoughts. I broke. My body broke. And my ego had to get to that point of wanting to disappear in order to really face myself and to acknowledge that something wasn't okay. So I did it. My ego was very clever. I pushed against, and I was constantly getting reminded and little nudges from the universe to be like, bro, something's got to change. And I just kept ignoring it. I started to mistreat women. There were two incidences where I mistreated my partner, and I was like, where is this behavior coming from? I wasn't taught this by my mum. I wasn't taught this by my dad to treat people like this, but my heart and my soul was like screaming at me, and my ego was just trying to sabotage everything to get me to fucking wake up. And it wasn't until I started having the panic attacks and these other issues. I was hospitalized many times, drug overdoses, severe sickness and illness. All of these moments I still didn't wake up. It was the panic attacks that got me. And when I was laying on my back, hyperventilating, my hands were cramping. I don't know what this meant, but now it's tetany. It's called, it's essentially a physiological term to signal that our body is hyperventilating or blown off CO2, which is causing the contraction of the blood vessels and our hands cramp. I was laying on my back, hyperventilating with no control over my breath. I don't know what was going on, but I couldn't stop my breathing. I thought I was going to die. Wow. And my best mate at the time was holding my hands, looking at me on the ground, just telling me to breathe. Funny now, full circle, this is what I teach people. But I didn't know how to breathe. I didn't know how to stop my breathing. And it lasted for about, I'd say 10 minutes, hyperventilating, sweating down my face. And when I started to regather control, I was looking up. All I can remember was seeing these trees sway in the wind. My best mate is here with me. And when everything diffused, this emotion just like, I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop this emotion from coming up. And tears just started coming out of my eyes. I was like, fuck, what is going on? And I just recognized in that moment how unhappy, how uncomfortable, and how not okay I was.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just like, something's got to change from this moment on, like right here. Otherwise, I'm not going to last any longer. I'm starting to hurt other people. I'm starting to hurt my family. But most importantly, I'm really starting to hurt myself. I was like, this has got to stop. And I made the choice in that moment when the tears were flowing. I was like, I got to change. And that was the beginning of the journey. That's what made me stop. But all the men out there that are listening to this potentially, that are not okay, that are seeking support, you don't have to get to that moment of complete self-destruction and complete annihilation and avoidance and sabotage. You don't need to do that. You don't need to hurt other people. You can be a good man. You can treat people well.
It's got to be conscious of those actions that you take.
Did you have a breaking point, Cooper, in your journey to put you on this path that's similar? Because my story is almost the same as yours, right? I shared a little bit this morning, and I can, but I'm curious if you did.
I mean, my story kind of, I wouldn't say I ever had like really gnarly mental health. Looking back now, I'm like by far the most happiest I've ever been. I used to travel the world as a pro surfer, but I had like not suicidal ideation, but like I was talking to Dean about it last night. My mate who owns his studio is a pro mountain bike rider, and I was like, there's many times where I'd be like, oh, I wouldn't take my life, but I'd be pretty stoked if this plane just crashed and it wasn't my fault and it was just done. And I was living the best life ever, traveling the world, and I didn't realize that was, unhealthy. We shouldn't be living like that. And I look at like young kids now, hearing of like, so much self-harm going on and all this stuff, and it's just like you don't realize how good life can get because you've only got like your relative experience. So I was kind of like living through that journey and basing so much of my self-worth on external validation and, caring what other people think of me. And I was just kind of reflecting on what you said there, Ryan, this idea of like, we walk past people in the park who are meditating and we judge them. Quite often I feel like that's a perfect evidence of what you envy, what you wish you had, but you judge them and throw shit on them because you're like so scared to do that too. And it's funny, you're like, you'd walk past someone meditating against a tree and like, how's that weirdo? But someone sitting there like looking down at their phone, like crinkled neck, scrolling Instagram, it's just normal. It's like so interesting. And I'm the same. I used to have that judgment. Now I walk past someone like that and I'm like, you legend. Someone sitting on the beach by themselves, I'm like, they've got it sorted out. I'm not going to be like, how's this person? Which is what I used to do because there's evidence that that's what I wish I could do. But going back to my story, so I'd had this sort of like lesson taught to me in my early 20s, like don't base your self-worth and your identity on your career and your achievements, base it on your personal values. And it sent me on this path to understand my values. So there wasn't really like a moment that I can like think of, but the kind of moment that everyone who's listening to my podcast kind of understands where my stories come from is my younger sister lost 2 friends in a fortnight. Actually, it turns out I spoke to her about this yesterday. I've been telling the story wrong, my whole Good Humour Factory story. She was like, no, there was a car crash and one of her friends died, and then 2 weeks later, one of her friends, the other boys, like took his own life. So that was kind of the catalyst. I don't know why the story, I always thought it was 2 took their own life, but same thing, like two of their friends died within a fortnight, and I was just like, this is so heavy that like kids are struggling that much and don't have the skills and the awareness to deal with these challenges. Maybe I can go and help a kid or two. I just felt guilt. Guilt's probably the underlying feeling that I had, that I was traveling the world, living this extraordinary life, albeit a little bit unhappy at times, but not understanding what the potential of like kind of happiness is and fulfillment in my own life. So I kind of was like, maybe I can like help these kids a little bit, and no intention. I didn't know have the understanding and science really of kindness back then, but realized that, hey, by doing that, it actually now makes me feel good. Like the fulfillment and the, goodness in life doesn't come from winning a surf comp. It comes from helping other people. And I was just sort of lucky enough to, I just accidentally find myself in that space because my sister lost that friend, and I was like, maybe I can help a kid. Like the reason why I actually started it was I'd lost my sponsor in surfing in like 2016 or something, and I was working full-time as a tradie to fund my career, but I was also like working as a surf coach, and I'd run these like little 2-day surf camps for like life's just such a timing thing. Like I'd literally just run these weekend camps with these kids for surfing, and obviously I took them through surf drills and a gym session, and I needed to like fill time in the day, and I was like, I'll take them through like a 10-minute mindfulness exercise that I kind of subtly did a meditation with them, but I didn't call it a meditation. I was like, all right, let's visualize like a new maneuver that we want to do in surfing. And I took them through like, okay, now imagine like what conditions do you need the waves to be like? Okay, this is what it needs to be like. And now imagine you're in that condition and you're doing that maneuver. So it was like, they didn't realize, but it was a meditation. It was a visualization exercise. And where I'm going with this, the kids after the workshop must have told their parents like, oh, we did this really cool thing. And they actually really liked that. So a few of the parents were telling me like, oh, they said they loved that visualization exercise. Didn't put two and two together at the time, but I was kind of telling that to my dad. And then when my sister lost that second friend, and she sort of told us at the dinner table that a friend, had taken his own life. And my dad, I talked to him about it all the time, this story. He's like, I just literally saw you like visibly like frustrated and pissed off and upset by this. And he said to me, like, it's like all those kids really enjoyed learning about mindfulness and meditation with you in that surf camp. There was only like 5 or 6 kids, but like, maybe you can go and talk to some kids at your old school and, share this. And that kind of sent me on this path of like, how can I learn as much as I can from incredible people on my podcast, like Ryan, and experts in all different fields. Like, I don't have to be the expert, but if I can be the cool sort of conduit of information to make school kids and, the greater community to be like, oh, mental health doesn't have to be this like mental illness space. I just didn't relate to that. Anytime you hear the word mental health, I'd think like Lifeline, Beyond Blue, Kids Helpline, going to see your GP, getting on a free mental health plan, like so important, but I saw that as mental illness. And when I started to communicate like mental health and mental illness should be viewed through different lights, it helped me really change my own perspective and realize mental health is about taking actions to avoid getting to mental illness, not living your life until you get to a point of struggling and not reflecting and, taking stock on how you're feeling and then getting to the net that is the mental illness industry. I was like, maybe I can, be preventative exactly like you guys and upskill and change perspectives. And that was, where I realized at the time, like I was still professionally surfing. So I was like, oh, it'll be cool. Like this pro surfer's coming to talk to us while he's still competing. And I had so much imposter syndrome thinking like when I retire from competing, it won't be as cool that I'm here. Whereas now I'm like, I don't think the kids even care or notice or think about that I was a surfer. I just throw in like a little bit at the start. It's more so like, hey, I'm just a dude that's like, had some loss in my family, like, close to me, and I've learned some lessons, and maybe if you guys could pick up one of those lessons, because I think back to like the best lessons I've learned, and they're usually like a quote or a perspective shift of someone going, oh, mental health and mental illness aren't the same thing, and going like, oh, that's as valuable as getting a full course on information. It's just like the changing the ship degree by 1 or 2 degrees, like you end up in, a year or two of dedicating yourself to something in a way different place. That was a long-winded story, but that was kind of, I guess, the origin and why I've started the Good Human Factory and do what I do, is just to try and shift perspectives and realize like it doesn't have to be this big, heavy, scary topic, mental health. It can be a whole range of things. So where'd yours come from?
Well, I feel like, in that sense, what you just said, like we're all on the same, like that shift of perspective, we're trying to create it. And then obviously cool to be conscious. You guys have like layers and tiers that you can go deeper, and we're starting to create those too. Like the Wednesday morning communities are entry level, you say. It's just that initial spark, like, hang on, I can get up early. I can meet a stranger, have a meaningful conversation. Then, it can go deeper into sessions, or we've been running men's retreats and such too. But my story was similar to yours, Ryan. It came from a point of struggle, or a point of where I felt like I needed to improve or change my life because I was living so out of disalignment, or within disalignment. It was in 2019. I too, like my ex-partner, she was an incredible person, and we spent 7 years together, and I mistreated her and did things that I look back on and deeply regret. I wish I never had done them, because I was lost within myself. So we traveled the world together for 4 years, and I was doing another whole feat challenge back then. I was hitchhiking around Europe for 5 months, and I lived off 10 euros a day, and I had a blog. I didn't vlog back then. It was in 2016, but I had a blog, and I was journaling and writing it all, and I was it was called The Limitless Ones. I was trying to inspire people that you can see the world and do difficult feats with no money. So I was doing that with my ex, and pushing. I think back then I wasn't quite true to myself, and I didn't have the purest intentions. I don't know why I was doing it. I knew I wanted to inspire, but I was kind of like willing to do anything to get there. And we ended up traveling for 4 years, and after getting back and hoping to be able to, my goal was to be able to travel or live overseas for as long as I could. And I'd failed that. I ran out of money, and I came home, and I'd been navigating this through my lens, like a fake commitment or relationship to the person that I loved, but I just wasn't ready for that. And so I came home, and I had no sense of community or connection or friends. I felt incredibly lonely, and even my relationship wasn't solid. So I ended things with her, which was a really difficult decision. And then within 2 weeks of each other, I got the news that my father had terminal cancer, which it was the 4th time it'd come back, and this was the end, basically. And then my grandpa passed away, all within 2 weeks, and he was my biggest masculine role model. Like, he was incredible. He was 103, so he lived a beautiful life, had a good innings. But I was the first on scene. He just died of old age, and I was first there. I remember I carried his body like into the lounge room and then into the ambulance while my grandma was there. And yeah, it was full on. And I had this moment like the next few days where I'm just like, I'm not living in alignment at all. I'm actually not happy. I hold myself to a regard of being somewhat conscious or a good person with good intentions, and I want to do this with my life, but I realized how I was living just wasn't that. And so I remember I just like cut everything from my life. I found yoga, actually, which really, that was the beginning to the unfolding of some consciousness and what I wanted to do. I found myself with the practice, and I think back now, probably it wasn't so much the moving of the body or the commitment. It was the fact that I was connecting breath to my body. And I had no idea then that's what it was, but it's just I was moving and breathing and slowing down. And it was actually Shavasana in the last 10 minutes of a normal yoga practice where I started to generally feel myself and happy again. And that was 6 months. All I did was I was a carpenter. I went back to like simple work, labor work, and then just did yoga. And yeah, I found myself again, my true self. And then that was when Ryan, the other Cold Nips co-founder, invited me over to Perth. And he was like, "Why don't you come over here, man?" And So
you from the Goldie?
I'm originally from Byron.
Okay.
But then I moved to Sydney and then to like South Coast, Victoria. Wow. And that's, kind of been all over the place, literally. And for me, like, when going all the way back to where I said earlier of like the commitment and the consistency that's required for running community, especially over the years, it has to come from pure intent. And what helped me get to that point in that journey was, one, the difficulty that I went through, but then also like the time that I'd invested through yoga, and simple breath work to find that integrity and that pure intent of why I want to do what I'm doing. Otherwise, if it was for anything else, like with the magnitude of work and effort that goes into this, I would have given up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's like so beautiful, your story. I think for anyone listening, just going off like all of our stories, I feel like it's, at the end of the day, it's just becoming mature men. It's like that's the main thing, is like becoming more mature. And I think like maturity is when you stop blaming. And I've watched a movie that is, if anyone's out there listening and they kind of, are a man and they're maybe not that proud of some of the choices they're making, like all of us are, and there's still choices that we make today, but I feel like we're far more conscious of those choices. There's a movie called The Peaceful Warrior and a book. Have you guys read it? Have you read it or seen it?
No.
Oh, it's a. Do you know this is a practice during practitioner training, is to watch the movie?
That's
homework.
No,
that's homework.
Well, that's what I was just about to tell everyone listening to this. That movie is just a very good visual view of a man who is external validation, victim mindset, and then meets a mentor and gets, learns to be conscious of his choices and take responsibility for his actions. Like, that's probably one of the best quotes I've ever heard. Yeah. And when you really break that down, like, we're all going through all of our day making like 99% of the choices we make unconsciously. So the more that we can bring consciousness to those choices, like when you're about to light that cigarette, like, am I consciously doing it or not? And then
or eating eating your meal.
Being conscious when you eat, but like, am I eating nutritious food, or am I just grabbing the first thing because, you know, it looks good at Macca's? And I'm the worst at this. Like, I'm definitely conscious, but I still make choices that I'm not proud of, and they're usually because I'm not being conscious while I'm making them. But then the thing that really I love about that quote is the second part, the taking responsibility for your actions. And I think this conversation has highlighted that really well, going back on you sharing what you started with, Ryan, about probably going a bit too fast with the growth at the beginning. And I think by you bringing that up and being honest about that and taking responsibility, and then as well with, you know, having to keep your integrity and split with Rue, like, that's taking responsibility for your actions, and that's really embodying that. And that's just so interesting that that's part of your training. It's an amazing movie. Yeah, it's like the best movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's some real nuggets of wisdom and learnings in there when you're open to see them all and learn them all. There's some beautiful metaphors in there. Those that are going to watch it, you can find it on YouTube. And,
is it on YouTube, the whole movie? Yeah, it's an old one. Have you read the book?
No, I haven't read the book.
I've heard the book is like even better. It's like the book is the same story but in depth, and like obviously with the wisdom of a book. I'll get us 2 copies. I'll get us 3 copies.
I'll have to read it. I don't know when.
It's incredible. It's a good book.
The movie's amazing. It's so good.
No, the movie's amazing. Sorry, I said book. Yeah, the movie's amazing.
But yeah, I haven't read the book, but I've heard the book's amazing too.
Oh, great. We have to get amongst it.
That's a good one. How long are we at? Hour and 10.
Hour 10. Yeah.
You guys got anything else you want to add or value that think's important? What's coming up? Tell me about your practitioner training, right? Because I'm about to embark on that journey with you. Man. What am I in for?
Oh, you're in for a journey. It's not just a training about breath work. It's really a self-exploration journey and practice of knowing thyself a little more deeply. I've got a holistic psychologist and an energetics and somatics coach who talk and emphasize the connection between the brain and body and how that all interacts and communicates with itself. And then I teach about the nervous system and the breath and how that all kind of impacts, and how the breath impacts the body, and then the body impacts the mind and the psychology and the mentality, and how it all weaves together. But the first 10 weeks of online training is really a self-exploration experience. And then we start to build the relationship with breath. We start to incorporate some protocols and practices to assist the body before we come to camp. And then camp's really about getting hands-on and learning from experience, learning from watching, learning from witnessing, and being a part of this great instrument of breath, meditation, and connection. And you'll get to experience it for yourself. But the whole thing and the way that it's laid out is really to invite people to come back to their most authentic self. You know, in the space of breath, in the space of yoga, in the space of anything, we're trying to like build more knowledge and like know more things, where this journey is about remembering and coming back to who we are beneath all of the constructs, beneath all of the protective mechanisms, beneath all of the beliefs and the patterns and behaviors, and it's returning back to you. And like us here right now, we know who we are, but a lot of people don't, and they're forgotten, and they're being someone for someone else, or they're pretending to be something because of the environment that they're in. So the whole course is about returning back to you, because when you return back to you, yes, you learn all of the breath science and physiology and all of the things that you need to about facilitating and supporting people through these experiences. But when you return to you, you then show up with this energy of like, I know who I am. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I believe in me, and that's all that matters. It's returning back to that kind of energy. And when you facilitate and support people and run community or run events from that energy, people feel you and they connect with you.
And also your health is limitless, and your capacity is extended. And I know, especially like from guys listening to this, they want to perform better or achieve more or whatever it is that they're pursuing. But when you connect it and link it to yourself and your purest self, then you get all those. You get ultra performance. You get ultra endurance. You can perform more and give more and serve more and have more of an impact when it's linked to that.
Yeah, it's all linked to the body, your trauma, your stress, and how you manage and navigate that. So a big part is remembering who you are, and that's from the decompression of the body, decompression of the stress, decompression of the trauma. Trauma is unprocessed energy in the body that's stuck and stagnant. So any moment that you've had something happen to you in your life and you weren't able to fully express yourself in the way that you needed to, you then shut that down, you stored that in your body, and then what happens as a byproduct of that, your nervous system then starts to create neural pathways to that experience from a negative standpoint, and it puts up defense systems to protect you from potential events, people, things, smells, sounds that are happening in the future that are going to remind you of that experience that you weren't able to fully process and let go of. Then those patterns and behaviours start to become your personality. So as an example, someone that nearly has a drowning experience at the age of 6, 7 years old, nearly drowns, gets out of the water, parents are like, hey, you're all right, mate, you're good, slaps them on the back. The kid needs to process and move through that traumatic event, doesn't get the ability to do that. The kid never likes the ocean again. That just becomes their personality. I just don't like the ocean. They're an adult now, 25 years old, and they're like, no, I just don't like the ocean. They forgot about that experience when they're 5 years old. Up until we start exploring the body from a more subconscious or deeper point of view with breath work. Yeah. They go through that event and their breath work experience, they come out the other side, they get back in the ocean. I love the water again. And it's this byproduct. That's just a really simple form. But the more so prevalent, and I'd say relatable, is the heartbreak, the heartache. Those that have had pain through relationship, close up. Their story is now, I can't trust love. I can't let love in. I can't let anyone get close to me. So there's this wall, there's this barrier. In their relationship, maybe even the relationship that you're in right now, if you're listening, you're not able to go deep or meet them in a way that you want to, and you feel that there's something in between the two of you. It's not the person standing in front of you, it's the trauma that you haven't processed from past relationships that hurt you. So when you remove that, you process that, all of a sudden your relationships get better, the ability to connect with people gets better, the connection with yourself gets deeper, and everything starts to perform better. It starts with the body, it starts with the stress, it starts with yourself.
Yes, yeah. I love that. It's so fascinating that, I love Dr. Nicole LePera, the holistic psychologist. Have you seen her stuff? She's great,
she's fantastic.
I love the way that she talks about that, like, it's pretty, like, step one when you start getting into, I guess, more conscious, you recognize that, like, you are not your thoughts. But when you start to really unpack that you're not your self-beliefs either, you've learnt them somewhere, you can unlearn them. And I was reading a book recently with Dr. Daniel Amen. He's like a neuroscientist from over in America. He's studied heaps of brain scans. He's got a thing called the end of mental illness. And he explained it in a way that just made so much sense to me. He says, your brain health is like a computer hardware, the actual computer. So you got to, like, eat nutritious food, do breath work, do these things that are going to upgrade your computer, the actual hardware of it. But then our mental health is like the software, the programs that we install through what we learn. And sometimes we get viruses and we need to, reboot the system, or we need to, like, change the pathway and, like, create new software, which is, our perspectives, our opinions, our view on the world. And they can change if we, if we upgrade the hardware and we have a better, stronger brain, then we can take on, new systems that we've downloaded because it can, function at a high, it's got the capacity to wipe out the virus and create a new system. And a nice way to look at it, like, there's two elements to it. There's, like, the physical of your brain health. So you need to do things like breath work, meditation, these things that show to, like, rebuild the brain, like build new pathways, do neurogenesis through exercise. So, like, these things are important. But then the other side of it is the software. Like, it's great to have an amazing system, but if you're, not reading books and educating yourself and changing your perspectives and growing, then the software just, you've got Windows 98 on a brand new MacBook. It's like you can do all the self hacks, all the breath work, the ice baths, all the brain health hacks, and buy the new computer. But if you're not, upgrading to better software, what's the point? So I think it's looking at it through that lens. When I started seeing that, I was like, that's a cool concept. What do you guys think of that?
Oh, no. I love that. I think there's this, like, huge craze now around biohacking and seeing how we can become better and reverse our aging and stop blue light and avoid seed oils and cold exposure and breathwork, etc., etc. But if you're not focusing on the main driver in you, your heart, your body, if you're not starting there from a physiological standpoint, all of these other extras aren't going to do jack shit. If you don't have a nervous system that has the capacity and ability to be fluid, to move in between sympathetic and parasympathetic and be balanced, the food that you're putting in your body is going straight through. This is IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. This is people that can't hold food properly. Your nervous system is so jacked up. You may be eating really well and eating and drinking the kombucha and all the microbiome supporting supplements, but if you don't have a healthy nervous system, you're wasting your time. Same with the blue blockers. They help support the circadian rhythm, but if you've got insomnia and if you're still very highly stressed and unable to diffuse that, you're going to be waking up through the night anyway. So you may as well sit on a screen all night. It's not going to make a difference. But coming back to that, I use the analogy, Coops, which I think you'll appreciate, is that we all have a certain capacity and ability to bring in stress through our day. It's like a memory card. We must find ways to consciously and positively move that stress and remove some of that memory throughout our day. If we don't, we get to full capacity and we have what? A nervous breakdown. What is a nervous breakdown? It's our nervous system. It's a nervous system that doesn't have the capacity to take on more stress.
It cracks.
So it cracks, it breaks. Or I have the breakdown, I have the snap, I have the argument, I lose my cool, I have the road rage. These are all symptoms of someone that's not expressing themselves and moving stress in a positive way, and they wait until it comes out in an unconscious way.
So how do you...
which is the breakdown.
How do you regulate
and
get to that point?
So,
and how do people listening?
Yeah, of course. I think without using breathwork, because I'm going to talk about breathwork being the best thing to do.
I thought the answer was just going to be breathwork.
No, yeah, breathwork is a great one. But dancing, going to the gym, surfing, swimming in the water, moving your body, giving it the ability to feel exhausted, like that's moving stress through the system. You can all dance, you can all sing in the car.
I was going to say singing and laughing.
Yeah, singing and laughing, it's all ways of moving energy. But if you're feeling like irritated and you feel uncomfortable and you can feel a real charge coming up.
Shaking.
Yeah, somatic shake your body. A good one for me is going into the ocean, going under the water, becoming the Hulk. Have a scream, have a shout. Nature won't judge you. The ocean won't judge you. Go and release that and express yourself in a preventative way. Preventative, like prevent before you vent out at your partner. Prevent before you go off at your boss. Prevent before you go off at the guy that just cut you off for the lights. Go and prevent. And this is why breathwork is so powerful, because we can use it not only as a way to release and bring up past traumas and behaviors, but we can use it as a preventative modality as well. We can use it to go into the building to release all this energy, release all this sound, rather than releasing that on our loved ones. Use it as a preventative. I'd rather somebody scream the house down in a breathwork experience, blow the roof off the place, make all the noise in the world. I'd rather them do it there than in their home or in public. Like that's the power.
And it really comes back to being conscious of your choices. So often when we're highly strung, it becomes less easy to become conscious of our choices. 100%. And there's this one that, once again, this was in the End of Mental Illness book, and he didn't use it in this exact context, but I just love this context of whenever something happens that we would normally react to and, lose our cool, try and, instead of getting furious, get curious. Why am I feeling like this? Oh, what's triggered me to feel like this? And it just changes this whole pattern from like, I'm in control, like a curiosity, rather than furious is out of control. The stimuli is controlling your reaction. So I've been using that a lot. If someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of getting angry, going like, I wonder what they're going, like, I hope their day goes, but like you take back control when you get curious about situations rather than furious. And we all have moments throughout every day. And furious doesn't have to be, the bloody red face, angry emoji. Furious can just be frustration, like anger, resentment, any negative perceived emotion. Not that, like, these are fine to feel, but be curious to why you're feeling it. And you can generally uncover that it's not that that's reacting, it's because of this. And then you take back control. I can go and fix this, take responsibility for, the actions that are making me feel like this, and reshift and reshape those self-beliefs and that, stuff that you're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that.
Big quote one-liner guy.
Yeah, I love it.
That's what I said through my workshops. I just love sharing these things because, like, the next I know there's probably thousands of people now that after sharing that quote, I've literally had people message me going, I love that one. I was about to get angry at something and I just stopped and said, I got curious that time and it diffused the situation. I asked them, like, hey, why that? And it, takes back that control. You meet them with, a softer 100%. Hand. Like, actually, this is a great one that I'm going to butcher this analogy, but Dean, my friend, told me this yesterday. It's like, so often people are like throwing bricks at each other, but you're both throwing it and they hit each other and they're building this wall in the middle. And guess what happens? One of you drop the bricks and then one of you doesn't throw the brick, and then they don't meet in the middle and it comes over the fence and you dodge it and then the fence falls down and you can meet face to face. Whereas we're all throwing, like when people are angry, you throw something, you build this wall between you because they just keep meeting in the middle and there's no connection, there's no overcoming that challenge because you're just building this wall by throwing stuff at each other. It's like if one of you drops a wall, let them throw it, be curious as to why they're being like that. It can help them get through it.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's like those things or those moments of rupture in our day, or the thing that happened, the road rage, or someone's going off. If we get upset or we get triggered in that moment, we need to recognize that that's not the actual issue. That's not what's going on in our body. That's just the top of the iceberg that we haven't addressed. So that's not actually triggering us into how we feel. It's all of the other things that have accumulated and built up over time that we haven't let go of, from making sure that we're expressing stress or tuning in with ourselves or checking in or having those bigger conversations. I love that analogy with the bricks. I think it's a great example of that disconnect that we all are seeing in the world of just, it's like we're shouting at each other, and what we're shouting is like, you don't understand me. You don't understand what I'm going through. Like, you cannot see my life is way worse than yours. Fuck you.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, how about we stop throwing bricks and we come together and we be like, hey, what if we could just stand there and go, hey, I'm sorry that you're having a hard day. I'm having a hard day too. Fuck, like, imagine that.
It all comes back to connection.
Absolutely.
And relatability, and the fact that most of us journey through these same stuff, and we experience these same emotions. And once we can connect and relate, and back to like what we've done and been seeing, and same with you, Coops, like that, I think is the foundation and the antidote to a lot of the struggle that exists in today. And
it's like just communications where the foundation, where it starts. Like, I read a great quote yesterday. It was like, unspoken expectations, future resentments. And it's like so true. Like when we like don't communicate with someone our expectation, I'll give you a random example and I'll bring it up with my roommate.
I've got many for you. I've got many for you too. I've got many examples as well.
Yeah, well, I've got just like my roommates who just moved in with me because my partner's gone overseas, like left his room a little bit messy, and like I haven't said something to him yet, but I will, because I'm like, my unspoken expectation will like build up without him even knowing that it's frustrating me that he's like kind of,
if you don't choose,
like just shut your door, or like, so I don't know, just like if I don't say something now, it'll be 3 months and I'll be like, oh, I never want to live that guy. Or I could say now, hey, can you just make sure, like, and to be honest, it's triggering for me because it's pointing my own flaws out, that when my room looks like that, so there's like a example of that, this idea of like our lack of communication is destroying our connection, because we're like, our unanswered, expectations are just like,
Bro, I'd love to go first, Jian. It's a good, it's going to spawn a big conversation here, I feel.
Yeah, could have another hour conversation just on that.
We'll go for another 50. We'll run it. We'll run through this topic and then we'll wrap it.
I was just saying, like, relatability right now is going to, like, there's 5 of us on this tour, and I've lived with Geordie, one of the creatives, but we all obviously have expectations of each other, and we're learning that, especially as I don't categorize myself as a boss in any sense, but I'm managing like the success, leading the success of this tour, and I'm wearing, I guess, a responsibility and expectation to make it, well, for it to have its greatest impact, I guess you could say. So I'm managing like these expectations on these guys, and I've found myself getting frustrated already. Like 2 weeks in, that's probably been the hardest challenge so far. The early mornings and the lack of sleep and tiredness and that, I know that I can sustain that, but I'm inspired. It's coming back to, I just need to communicate my expectation on my team, to diffuse a lack of then communication and like a disrupt in our relationship.
And a good one to just think of when you do want to get like frustrated is go back to my dad's one, appreciation, not expectation. Like we can diffuse it in our own mind when we have expectation, but yeah, we need to like share the expectation, but also like start thinking about, oh, why do I have that expectation of them? You know, I just appreciate that they're coming around this country and doing it with me. Like,
yep.
But yeah, give me your example, Ray.
Oh man, no, like,
say you got a couple.
Yeah, I've had many moments of getting to that point of like irritation from like having those expectations not met due to the lack of communication, tongue twister. And yeah, man, like I know that my biggest piece of advice for that is to just really share your heart and wear it on your sleeve when it comes to asking for what you need from people, whether that's your colleagues or your employees or your friends or your family. And if you haven't communicated yourself and you didn't set the tone or the bar straight from the beginning and you're like, oh man, I should have talked about that, or I should have asked for that, or I should have communicated that, heart on the sleeve, man. Like I remember really clearly a conversation with Rue and Byron, and they just weren't supporting. We were staying up in a rental up on the Sunshine Coast. They just weren't supporting much in the kitchen and cleaning and stuff like this. And I was starting to just build this resentment up. I was just like building this resentment up, and I was just like, and I'm usually the guy that I'll just make everyone else happy. I'll just do it. I'll just get it done. I know it's got to get done. I'll just do it. And I'm sure you resonate with this too, Jian. And I know that you do this yourself because you just drove across the countryside and probably your 2 coupes. We like put ourselves last in every scenario because we're just givers and we want to create beautiful experiences of people. So we neglect what our needs are and what we do need. And when we need to feel supported and we need something done. And there's a moment where it'll get to the point where this energy will build in the body and it has to come out. And if we don't communicate correctly. So when I've had those moments and I wasn't communicating correctly, the way that I share this and I bring it forward is like from my heart. And like I sat there and I just said to them, boys, like, I'm not enjoying who I am right now. I'm not enjoying the way that I feel right now. I don't want to feel this way. Like, can you help me out? Yeah, what do you need help with? I really need support with just some housework, just tidying. I feel like I'm always doing it. And I'm like, this energy's building in me of like frustration. I don't want to feel frustrated towards you guys. I love you guys. I don't want to feel this way towards you. Help me out, please.
And how well received was that?
Oh, so well received.
It's the thing, if we communicate, quite often people are happy to meet our needs, but we don't communicate them and then build up that resentment. It's
100%.
Yeah.
And we attack them.
Or we attack them, or it builds up and you're like, when are you guys going to fucking help out? Yeah. And that's how it ends up, and it turns into this thing. So like the communicating
there's like toxic masculinity and then there's masculinity. Like be present, be soft, be clear with your communicating. Hey guys, I love yous. I don't want to resent you. Can you please help me out in the kitchen? Of course. Hey guys.
Didn't even notice we weren't doing it.
Exactly.
You know, to them it's just not.
That's exactly it, right?
Not.
Yeah, communicating as a practice. But it's a big one, and I'm sure people that are listening are going like, oh man, like, yeah, maybe I could be a bit more softer in the way that I approach these things that I need. And it's important, and it's up to us to take responsibility and have awareness with how we are coming forward and across to people too. How are they going to receive me? How's Rue and Byron going to receive me if I say, boys, you need to do the dishes more?
It's our fear of rejection.
Yeah, it is. Or, hey boys, can you support me? Like, I don't like the way that I feel and I don't like the way that I'm becoming towards you guys. I need support. It's different.
Yeah, you take it on yourself. It's like, I'm the one here taking responsibility.
Absolutely.
Rather than it's, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's like, no, I haven't communicated with you.
Absolutely.
It's such a subtle thing, but... Man, I feel like this was like we built and warmed up all the way to like probably the nicest part of our chat. One of the like I think most valuable little segments I reckon I've had on any of my podcasts for a long time. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like you need to get in the car and start getting ready to drive to your next stop.
Yep.
You've got potentially to look at your phone because you might have a baby on the way. So this has been amazing. First of all, like thank you guys for being mates and connecting with the work that I do and connecting with, you know, my audiences and spreading just good energy around the country. It's so important and nice to connect with other young men who are, you know, doing something that's trying to make the world a better place. There's obviously so much emphasis, especially when you're a young man, to, you know, get ahead in life and make money and, you know, set yourself up and not put your time and energy into making the world a better place. I feel like quite often the general scripture is work hard, make a lot of money, get to your mid-40s, 50s, and then get into philanthropy, whereas we've kind of flipped the switch. And I think it's hopefully a good example for anyone watching. We obviously have 3 completely different things, but I know for me and Ryan, like, it's our full-time job now. You can create a business out of a movement that's going to really help people. And it's so funny that you create a business that is just trying to sell bloody shirts to someone and people are happy to do it, but then you create a business that's really trying to make the world a better place and is making big impact, and people kind of look at it weird that you're making money out of it. So I feel like the less that we can stigmatize, like, hey, wouldn't you rather we make a business that's successful and makes heaps of money like we all dream of doing, but doing something that's helping people and people are happy to pay, you know, like the consumers are just happy. It's normally the people who are the tradie who start going like, oh, right, I'm just trying to make money out of people doing this. It's like, well, if I didn't make money, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be, you know, digging holes on a job site, and we wouldn't get these thousands and hundreds of thousands of people being impacted. So 100%. Trying to shift that perspective of that it's okay to turn these movements into businesses. But if everyone's winning, it's great business. It's not a, you know, it's not a scam of trying to like get people. And that's where like a lot of the charities do end up being, like a lot of the big charities have, you know, the people at the top are making so much money. So that's why some more. Not doing
anything about.
Exactly. And it all goes into administration. So I think after today's chat, if you are looking to like, you know, support grassroots thing, like don't be scared to go and pay to come to a breathwork session, because that's going to have just as much impact as putting $20 in, you know, a fund for a charity that, you know, is a mega charity, which they are doing amazing work, but they get so much funding from government and different mega organisations who need the tax write-off. So like looking at small organisations who are really doing grassroots, I think is an important one. But yeah, anything else you guys want to leave the chat with?
Bro, no, thank you for just sharing that and bringing that to light. We could probably do a whole podcast on that topic, and it's a really important one to acknowledge. So just thank you for sharing that, and thank you for having us on. I love what you do. I love what you do. I love what we do. And as we said at the beginning, it's a lonely space, a lonely field to be in. Many eyes are on us. There's lots of pressure. There's lots of responsibility, and yeah, I wanted everyone just to know that we are going through our stuff as well, and it's not what it looks like from the outside. It's not a highlight reel. We're days in, days out grinding. It's not 5 days a week, it's 7. It's 24 hours a day. Like, I wake up at 10, 11 o'clock writing things down. I don't know what you guys are like, but my mind just continues to move. And there's some days that I'm like, I wish that I was back on the trade site painting walls for a living.
Going home and switching off.
Going home, switching off. And there's some days that I'm like, this is too much. There's some days that I'm like, make it all stop. But mornings like this morning, and seeing the people come together and seeing the genuine face-to-face impact that we're all creating here together makes it worth it, you know. And it's so much further beyond Ryan. It's now the movement of Call to Be Conscious and the movement of the Good Human Factory and Cold Nips. It's beyond us. We're just the leaders, and we're doing our best to lead the way, and holding and withholding the quality and integrity along the way. And that's the journey of life. And if I'm going to leave you guys with anything, it's just do what makes you feel good, and follow that feeling, and be truthful, be honest, be real, and that's all you can do.
Be a good human, be conscious.
Be a good human, be conscious.
Yeah. Little notes of wisdom from all of us. But no, I just want to say thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure connecting with you both. I've seen the journey online and over the years, and yeah, what's coming to mind is just dream together. Collaboration over competition, especially in this space. I think you can really move mountains, but also bring a lot more meaning and depth to work when it's connected with people doing similar things. So I appreciate these conversations. And for anyone listening, there's so many people out there that think and feel the same. And I think us unraveling and showing a bit of our, who we are, our authenticity is the same. It's the same invitation for everyone listening. So, yeah, thanks for having me, man.
But yeah,
there's a quote that I love that will wrap this up, and it's when you're on mission, there's no competition.
Love it.
You know,
beautiful.
There's not, and we've got some big things coming.
Yeah, we do.
Next I reckon year. I know about it.
Yeah, do you know about it?
Well, I know what you've told me about it, and then you were telling me about it, so we'll chat about it.
Next year.
But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and yeah, hopefully you'll have a beautiful day.
Thanks, Coops.
You.